opening press conference for Women Deliver 2023. We're so excited to have you all here as our official media and content creator cohort. I know we've been emailing and having lots of communications with you all leading up to this, so it's just thrilling, so exciting to see you all here. I think it's very important to stress that Women Deliver takes an inclusive approach to gender. So we welcome trans, non-binary, and other gender non-conforming individuals into our advocacy. So we are gathered here today right before we kick off the conference this week, where we'll have more than 6,000 delegates from around the world, representing grassroots advocates, feminist organizations, LGBTQIA+ organizations, youth-led organizations, as well as governments, international agencies, the private sector, and philanthropy. And we're all coming together to identify ways to advance gender equality. And at today's press conference today, we will be focusing on one really critical ingredient in gender equality, which is free and open democracies. And all of our speakers today are experts on that particular topic. So I'll go ahead and introduce them now, even though, as I said, they probably need no introduction. We first have Dr. Maliha Khan. She's the president and CEO of Women Deliver. And next to her, we have Phumzile Malambo Nguka. I'm sure you all know. She's the former deputy president of South Africa, former head of UN Women, and currently serves as the chair of the board for Women Deliver. And now we have Helen Clark. She's the former Prime Minister of New Zealand and also serves as a Women Deliver board member. And then finally, we have Mary Robinson. She serves as the chair of the Elders, and she's the former president of Ireland. And with that, I will turn it over to Maliha.
Thank you very much, Kim. I think I need a little bit more introduction than the three sitting to the left of me, but nonetheless, thank you for this opportunity to all of you to speak. I also wanted to include in the list of very important stakeholders and delegates that are coming, and ones that we intentionally have reached out to and want to include as a part of the feminist movement and as champions of gender equality, all of you. You're not here just to report an event, I hope. You're also here because you truly believe in gender equality and see yourselves as champions of it, and also see the role of media as being instrumental in taking out the messages, spreading it, and creating one of the things that is so incredibly important in order to achieve gender equality, which is creating aspirational narratives about it and what we want to achieve and how we want to achieve it, what we believe in, what our stands are. And so please take that role over these next few days, and we very much thank you for the role that you play in that. Moving on to the topic at hand, as you know, Women Deliver truly feels that gender equality cannot be achieved unless we have free and open spaces. Spaces that are accessible, spaces that are inviting, that are inclusive, and those spaces are many types. The Women Deliver Conference is one of those spaces, and we are really, really proud of what we've been able to achieve by having all of you here, 6,300 registered delegates from 170 countries. And that is that we've never been able to achieve that before, and I hope that that is something that really takes forward gender equality in a quantum leap way. But other spaces that also have to be free, accessible, open, and inclusive are those spaces that we live in, the context that we live in, the context that girls and women live in and continue to try to achieve what they're trying to achieve in their lives. And those spaces are often controlled by, obviously, their families, their communities, but also by the national governments and the policies that exist for them. So it's really important, if we want to achieve gender equality, that these spaces remain open, they remain democratic, and they remain ones in which the rights of every individual, no matter what their identity, is respected and is protected. And that is something we feel very strongly in. One thing that Kim didn't quite get into the details, but I feel very proud of, and I want to, if you indulge me for a second, I want to go into the details of, which is that for Women Deliver, we have women in the title, but for us, a woman is any person who identifies as a woman, has been identified by others as a girl or a woman, or has had at some point in their lives the lived reality of what it is to be a girl or a woman. And to us, that is who we are including in our spaces, and that is who we are trying to fight for in terms of their rights and them being able to achieve gender equality. It's more important than ever right now, with the closing democratic spaces that we're experiencing in so many contexts. Also, with the anti-rights movement and the opposition gearing up, having their own strong strategies that we're seeing make strides off in many different contexts, ranging from North America and some of the things that happened here to much closer to home here in Africa. And if we as a movement are to be able to achieve gender equality, we have to recognize these forces and also be strategic in how we address them. So with that, I'll turn over to Funzili, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much and good afternoon. And thank you so much for being here. We don't take your presence here for granted, so we truly appreciate your being here. Just taking off from where Maliha left off, we believe in Women Deliver on the importance of free and open democracies. In fact, democracy is a government by and for the people. And by people, we mean men, women, and all other gender non-conforming people. So if we are to talk about democracy, all of these people have to be included, especially when it comes into decisions that affect their lives. Only in open democracies do women have a chance to have their rights addressed properly. At this point in time, we are in a sad situation where it could take us 131 years before we reach gender equality. This is because the majority of the countries in the world are not open democracies. In 2019, when we met at a Women Deliver conference, where we thought we were kind of like making it forward slow, but nevertheless, we felt there was a path. That path has been cut out. We are struggling to see our way forward. And we definitely think not having proper and real democracies is part of the problem. And the message we are flagging today is that we have to do something. We don't want to come here or wherever we will be for the next conference and find that we have even moved back even more. It's not 131 years, maybe it's 140. We also think that it's important that in a democracy, women's rights are laws, so that if anyone infringes those laws, there are consequences. But also we want to have both an opportunity to incentivize progress as well as to deal with situation where there is no progress. We have in this conference girls, young women, and women like us. Kind of like gogos in my language. And our hope is very much in those young people. It is absolutely important that tomorrow is going to be better than today and yesterday. And the message we are sending is that we have to decide today what is it that we're going to do in order to create that possibility. We need to make sure that access to healthcare is not a privilege. We need to make sure that access to education, which we are celebrating the fact that we have gone very far as access to education is concerned, but nevertheless, nothing is taken for granted. We have to continue to protect it. And of course, women's economic empowerment is still a big issue. Women's participation is still a big issue. We are asking you to work with us on the issue of the climate crisis. We feel that even the most skeptical person, today there is so much evidence to show that the whole world is in a crisis, but also that women are even having it harder than anyone else. So we need the investments that will help women, we need the education that will help women, and we need the resources that will make it possible for women to move forward. When we hear that countries are democracies, but they are losing the rights as far as LGBTQI are concerned. When a country calls itself a democracy but takes away affirmative action, when you hear that the country is a democracy but is racist, all of those intersecting issues are a major concern in the agenda of Women Deliver. So we hope you can work with us in this conference to do the best that we can all do in order to move forward. As I end, you will remember that we've just had a pandemic. And gender equality and gender-based violence is a pandemic in the world. And we know how countries fight pandemics. They close borders. They tell you to stay at home. They throw money at the problem. They make health workers work around the clock so that people do not die. That resolve is lacking when it comes into this pandemic that was there before the health pandemic and is still there after the health pandemic. So let's find a way of making sure that we create that awareness in our governments and in our societies. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and fantastic to see such a great media attendance for the press conference. We were asked to say a little bit about our own journey, how we got to be involved with Women Deliver, and then, of course, about the issues at hand. So for me, I'm Helen Clark. I'm a long-time political leader from New Zealand, former leader in the multilateral system as head of the UN Development Programme, and now a leader in a range of public good organisations that includes chairing the Partnership for Maternal, Newborn and Child Health. We advocate for women, children and adolescent rights, and I'm also a board member of Women Deliver. And I came on the board of Women Deliver a number of years ago because I saw the power that it had as a convener in the women's rights and gender equality space. And perhaps I'm the only person in the room, maybe, this is my 5th Women Deliver conference. I went to the one convened by Jill Sheffield, the founder of the movement in Washington, D.C. in 2010, then on to Kuala Lumpur in 2013, then to Copenhagen in 2016, then to Vancouver in 2019. And as you can see, we've sort of missed a year in the triennium because of pandemic-related issues, but here we are in Kigali, the first time it's been held on the African continent, and very, very happy to be here. But across all those convenings, I've seen Women Deliver's capacity to deliver on the themes that are set for this conference, and those are spaces. Women Deliver creates spaces for open and safe dialogue. Solidarity, it builds solidarity across movements. And solutions. Women Deliver convenings are solution focused. We don't just talk about the problem, we talk about what are the ways forward from the challenges that we face. Now, Phumzile has referred to the syndemic of crises that the world faces, which have made life tougher for women without question. I just want to say a word about that before coming to the particular rollback of rights issue. At PMNCH, we've referred to the triple C crisis: COVID, climate, and conflict. And women end up on the hardest end of all of that. In the context of the COVID crisis, and particularly the lockdowns of 2020, we saw so many health systems that had no resilience to keep providing basic sexual and reproductive health services. So women went without access to family planning supplies. They went without access to safe abortion, even where it was possible. They went without full access to prenatal, birthing, and postnatal services. What is the result of all this? More unplanned pregnancies. The rate of maternal mortality reduction has absolutely stalled. That is clear in the latest WHO reporting. Of course, also, when you have lockdowns, women tend to be locked in a home with a violent perpetrator. And the calls on our domestic violence services around the world went through the roof because of those pressures. Of course, with the school lockdowns, some children never got back to school, and disproportionately that was girls. UNESCO estimated quite early on that 11 million girls would never return to school. And for many of those girls, that will probably have meant an earlier marriage than otherwise might have been possible, earlier pregnancies, and so on. Also, the economic impacts of the pandemic. We know that the rates of poverty and hunger in the world have soared. So for those who are living in subsistence environments, if you can't go out and trade for the day, you don't eat. Very, very difficult. I recall from the height of the pandemic, some of the media reports interviewing some of the poorest people in our world, with people saying, I'm going to die of starvation before I die of COVID. And sadly, that was true. In the formal economies of the world, women also were disproportionately affected because of the nature of their work. Women are disproportionately in retail and services. And when retail's not operating and the normal services like tourism and hospitality are not operating, women lost jobs. And also there's clear evidence that more women left the workforce as a result of the pandemic, partly because, again, in lockdowns, for those who could work at home online, it's not so easy when you've got a screaming baby or toddler, is it? So there's a lot more pressure on women in these situations, and so the employment effect was disproportionate. Mary is the best place to talk about the impact of the climate crisis on women, which is quite profound and has just been such an incredible voice for climate justice and women's voices and perspectives being incorporated. And then, we could say a great deal about what happens to women during conflicts, and we have a horrific number of deadly conflicts around our world today, where women, of course, are the victims, the main victims, not the only victims, but the main victims of sexual and gender-based violence and conflict, and of course the displacement and all of it that goes with those horrible events. So, it is just so vital to get women's voices into pandemic preparedness and response, so that next time we face an adverse event, the services that women need can continue to be delivered and have resilience. It's absolutely essential to have women's voices in the the whole design of what we need to do to save our climate ecosystem, and the women, peace and security agenda remains a largely unrealised agenda. How often do you see photos or coverage of peace talks and you say, well, excuse me, where are the women? Well, we're told they're advising the men. Not good enough. They need to be at the table. So alongside all of this rollback that's come with the syndemic of crises is, of course, this anti-rights movement. And let's face it, it's had voice and power all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States of America and legislatures in that country through to the Parliament in Uganda cracking down on LGBTQI plus rights, or Russia banning gender reassignment surgery as it did last week through its Parliament, which built on a number of other legal constraints placed on the LGBTQI plus community, the so-called gay propaganda law, quote unquote, etc. So I think for this Women Deliver conference, we've got a lot on our plate here. There's a lot of issues. And this kind of convening offers the opportunity to build solidarity across the areas where rights are threatened and where women's voices are absolutely essential. Populists in democracies and autocracies alike are driving the rollback at the national level and also at the global level, and reflect for 20 seconds on the fact that we have never been able to improve as a global community on the Cairo outcome on population and development of 1994 or the Beijing outcome of 1995. And they are quite dated now. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of issues that have come along since those great outcome documents, and yet the political processes that drive outcome declarations for events like that are just not what they were because of pushback. We see populists and democracies turn on the institutions through which they gained power, meaning that the fight for rights is also a fight for retaining the integrity of democracies and their institutions. And on solutions, one of the inspiring things I think about this Women Deliver conference is the huge youth spaces and the attention being given to dialogue across the generations. Pumzile, when at UN Women, pioneered this with generation equality and bringing generations together to co-design solutions. And that's very much a theme of the youth events here, which I've been privileged to participate in one this morning. And I think we need a clear call for the youth movements to coalesce with feminists, with the rainbow communities, with the disability community, with all structurally excluded groups, because we're all in it together. An attack on one is an attack on all, and we need to stand together. So that's the opportunity that these convenings give us to bring so many people from around the world, truly a global gathering, and to strategize around how to move forward on these issues and not accept a rollback. We are the pushback against the rollback. Thank you very much.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. And unlike my good friends Maliha and Pumzile and Helen, I haven't been involved in the organisation, or I'm not on the board of Women Deliver.
Yet.
Though I have been at least one Women Deliver that I can remember. I think it was just one. I do agree with every point that was made about the importance just at this moment of Women Deliver 2023. I'm here in my capacity as chair of the Elders, the group which Nelson Mandela brought together more than 15 years ago. And I'm here with two very good sister elders, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf and Graça Michel. We are delighted to be here because we firmly believe in women's leadership, women's rights, gender equality. And I must also say that I'm here unashamedly and proudly as a feminist, and as someone who believes that we need to protect and build our civic spaces to enable all women and girls to do more than just survive. Women and girls worldwide, including the broader definition that Maliha set out, deserve a chance to thrive. And we're living in an era with an unprecedented set of challenges. Yet we also have the solutions to build a healthier, fairer future for all. They're at our fingertips. The elders are deeply concerned with 3 existential threats: the climate and nature crisis, the pandemic crisis, and the nuclear crisis. And indeed, with the worries about AI across all 3 crises. So that keeps us fairly busy, but we're also, clear that the effect of polarization and gender policy backsliding, which Helen in particular has spoken about, and a shrinking civic space, which all 3 of my friends have spoken about, what it's having on our ability to have open dialogues, open decision-making processes, and open democracies. We haven't given up hope of a better tomorrow, because the huge challenges facing our world have sometimes been used as an excuse by individuals and even by governments to increase repression, to revoke rights, and to attack gender justice. And we did see this, as has been mentioned, during COVID-19, when, for example, access to sexual and reproductive health services were curtailed. We see it in attacks on young women climate activists, a number of them friends of mine, who suffer awful abuse online because of the stands they're taking and the fight they're making rightly about the climate and nature crisis. Because they put themselves in the spotlight let's face it, there is an increasingly emboldened misogyny that is pervasive on social media, absolutely pervasive, and including among nominally progressive movements. We see it in the murders and disappearances of environmental activists, rights defenders. We see it in the exclusion of women and girls from decision-making spaces in conflicts, as Helen has mentioned. And we see it all too often in all too many places. So Women Deliver is an opportunity for us to regroup and, at this stage, fight back and fight back hard. Activists around the world are working to advance human rights and support gender justice, risking grave personal danger and sometimes in opposition to repressive state and opposition actors. So it's critical that we uphold spaces where all voices can be heard and where constructive dialogue can be held among those with different opinions. And that's the bedrock of open democracies. Let's remember that an open civic space is not one where everyone necessarily agrees. Not at all. The value is that it's one where people can disagree in safety and where human rights are respected. And it's also a brave space. Feminism, when it becomes just a set of cliches or hashtags, doesn't do anybody any good. We need to be willing to listen to criticism and to take action to remedy things where needed. If we find women or girls are missing from spaces that are designed to be inclusive and diverse, we need to fight with them so that they are in the room and their voices are heard and respected. As much as we face terrible challenges, we do also have incredible opportunities ahead of us. But we can only do what needs to be done to tackle existential threats and the pushback on human rights if we have all of us in this together. We need the potential and energy of each and every one, and therefore we cannot do this without women and girls. I could say a lot about the climate crisis. I'm very aware that we actually need a movement, and many of us are beginning to work on this movement. And look out for this flower, dandelion, and the Dandelion Project, and a bit more about that, but not here. It's not appropriate to this press briefing. But we need to counter the extraordinary work being done on the other bad side, if I can call it that. The 4 billion a year spent with misinformation and disinformation about climate. Mm-hmm. And we need to understand that we need to get smarter and we need to work together. We need women to step up and give leadership. So that will be, I hope, something we can talk about during this conference. So finally, my encouragement to the women and girls at Women Deliver in Kigali, and my plea to all those around the world who are not here, is to do all you can to protect and extend open spaces for gender equality and women's leadership in your own communities and contexts. Governments, businesses, community leaders, UN bodies and institutions, NGOs, all of us, take the steps necessary to have women working at every level in your organizations, movements, and teams. Let's create a world where we no longer need conferences like this one, because we're free from the patriarchy that has been holding us back with all its ills. That's why Women Deliver 2023 is so important, and I'm so glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I think we can now open the floor to Q&A. Do we have a microphone on this side?
Hello, everyone. I'm Asim Nawaz from Pakistan, representing the Dayspring Media. I'm basically founder of the Dayspring Media. Thank you very much for having us. My question is from Vibrant Dr. Maliha Khan. In countries where cultural barriers prevent women, significant number of women from being part of the workforce, what strategies Women Deliver has implemented, or what initiatives have you taken or you are planning to take? Because when we talk about open democracies, we must involve women in, we must uplift women. Their economic uplift is must. So what initiatives are you going to take or you have taken so far? Thank you.
Are we going to take a round of questions? Or?
Okay, my name is Samuel Getachew. I'm a freelance journalist based in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, and it's nice to be in Kigali. You know, you've talked about climate change, education, housing. It's some of the conversations you often hear in Starbucks and some of the Western nations. In my country, there was a conflict in the last 2 years where gender violence, violence really affected women. I was in the Tigray region a few weeks ago working for the New Humanitarian, and we saw lots of victims, women as young as 10, 9, telling us they've been raped. Rape being the highlight of the conflict, that some estimate more than 1 million people may have died in this conflict. Too many to count. Where were the feminists when these people needed your voice? I mean, Ms. Helen Clark touched on violence a bit, but we really didn't see anyone speak up or speak in a united voice. You talk about gender parity, Justin Trudeau's gender parity and human rights and so on, but people are being raped at the moment, and I just want to know, where is your voice to speak for these victims? Because too many women are being affected by this conflict, and it's still ongoing. Thank you.
So, Thais Guadalara from Canal de la Ciudad from Argentina. First of all, I would like to know, because you described like the meaning of Women Deliver Conference, but I would like to know which are the main results that you expect to have at the end of the conference. And maybe for Mary Robinson, what results, recommendations, or advice you expect maybe this conference could get in the road to COP28, especially considering that COP27 was a very difficult COP for women. Thank you.
You're absolutely right that economic development, or being a full participating economic citizen of your country, and having economic independence and ability to earn an income is very, very important. But we can't forget that that's actually very interrelated with all the other issues we've been speaking about. A woman cannot achieve economic well-being and her full potential as an economic actor if she's married early, if she's not allowed to finish school, if she faces gender-based violence, if she faces social norms that prevent her from doing it, if she was told as an adolescent girl that maths or science or other things that actually get you more into the workforce and are not for her, if she's told that an education is only to get married, or she's pulled out of school because the family suffers, economically, and one of the main coping mechanisms families often have is to pull girls out of school, reduce the amount they have to spend on it, and get them back into household labor. So, completely agree with you that particularly in countries like Pakistan, where the workforce, the formal participation in the workforce is very low. The informal participation is much higher than men, actually. If you look at a woman's daily life, she's actually doing much more work. It's However, it's not counted in the statistics. It's also not paid. She very seldom has control over those resources, and she has very little decision-making power over it. So this is where at Women Deliver, and this is the ethos of the conference also, we strongly believe that all girls and women do not lead single sector or issue lives. And so we have to look at the entirety of the girl or woman's life, and this is what we've been working on. One of the ways that we try to address this, we do not work at a country level. However, we try to convene people and use the power of convening and collective action to drive the agendas where we create the narratives so that people can have more aspirational and inspirational standards for which to try to achieve it, and can hold those, not just governments, but all of those who have responsibilities and duties towards them accountable. So that's what we're trying to do. If I could ask Mzili perhaps to address the Ethiopia question.
Yeah, thank you so much for asking that question. At the height of the war in Tigray, when the violence against women was unbearable, the organization of women, especially on the continent, in most cases led by the African Women's Leadership Network, one of the most difficult challenges we faced was how much the media, which we don't control, was not interested in the story to the extent that we expected them to be outraged. Of course, it didn't help that it was the same time we were still battling with COVID-related issues, but there was a lot of space where this issue on its own right could have been taken. But lo and behold, I ended up being one of the negotiators of the peace settlement of Ethiopia. That is where I was flabbergasted, because at every turn of those negotiations, bringing women into the equation was so hard, to the extent that even if I had wanted to pull back, the one thing I thought, if I were to ever pull back here, then there's no women in these talks. So I have to pull through. So open democracies would not allow this situation to happen. The fact that in Africa, we do not have enough governments that could have rallied behind the Ethiopian women and the women in order to make sure that the voices of both women in Ethiopia and Tigray and the voices of the women in solidarity with those women could be heard is, for me, part of the big reason why I am even afraid for the women in Sudan right now. Because what are we hearing from them? I talked to the women in Sudan. We put out statements. It's a tiny paragraph like this. So there's almost like a macro and a micro situation. Whatever battle we win in the most localized way has more significance if we have a bigger possibility to take the issue at a macro level. I absolutely agree with you that much more was needed and is needed, especially right now after the American pullback on the humanitarian aid in Tigray. And to the extent that we can, we just have to keep on expanding this space, because every time we push forward on the space, there's a pushback on where we could push women. And I think even as Women Deliver, this is one issue we have to strategize about.
Absolutely.
How do we make sure that women in such a corner can be heard despite the conditions that are unfavorable?
Yes, I'd like to say something on this. Rape and all other forms of sexual violence are war crimes. And I have no doubt that war crimes were committed in Tigray. You asked, where is your voice? I was a voice that constantly used my social media platform, main platform being Twitter, to draw attention to what was happening in Tigray throughout that active phase of the conflict and leading up to when Pumzile and colleagues were able to mediate a ceasefire and what flowed from there.
At the moment, we do not have an engagement with the President of Ethiopia. She's coming here for the opening ceremony. However, we encourage all the Ethiopian rights activists and the feminist movement within Ethiopia to reach out to her in whichever way they're able to do that. Many of the heads of state and heads of government who are coming for the opening ceremony, will not be participating in the other sessions, unfortunately.
Thank
I
you.
think we had a question about
It was
Yeah,
the
well-
main outcomes of the conference.
the main outcomes of the conference, absolutely. So some of the main outcomes of the conference we're hoping are the agendas that are being led by many of the institutions and organizations that are coming here. Each one of them has their own outcome that they want to achieve through the power of convening, and we are the curators of this conference. This is not a conference that's going to have a main outcome document or some sort of statement. We believe in action. And not statements. We're not going to come out with those types of commitments. However, hundreds and hundreds of institutions and organizations have framed their own agendas, their own outcomes, and what they want to achieve with it. We will be putting together an outcome document much later as we gather all this information that will talk about what networks were formed, what commitments were made, what agendas were pursued, and what the connection with other big convenings and gatherings, like there's going to be one at the sidelines of the UN General Assembly, or at the UN General Assembly itself around the Generation Equality Forum, and others like that. Someone mentioned COP. I'm going to let Mary answer that, but we know we have an agenda around strategizing for the COP and connecting that with the next COP and going forward. So that's what we're looking for as the main objectives. Mary, on the COP.
Okay, well, thank you for the question about COP. I'll try and keep my answer brief because I could go on for a long time on that subject. We're running out of time. We know we're running out of time. Every scientific report is more scary. Heat waves and heat itself is more scary. The last mandate I had for the UN from Ban Ki-moon was in 2016 on El Nino and climate. I'd done climate itself before the Paris Agreement. But in 2016, there was a new mandate, El Nino and climate. It was scary. I won't go into it. And actually, Tigray was one of the places I went to on that occasion. And I saw the effects. We are already beginning to see the effects of an El Nino.
Yeah.
2016 was the hottest year up to now. 2023 is likely to be the hottest year, and 2024, hotter again. And it could be really, really very serious and very painful in the sense of the number of deaths, the number of people displaced because of heat, etc. So we're running out of time, which is why COP28 is so important. We cannot afford this kind of incremental stuff that's going on. We don't need to phase down coal, oil and gas. We need to phase out coal, oil and gas, and we need that commitment at COP28. We need to stop funding what's destroying us. I belong to a group of business leaders. I'm not a business leader myself. I'm that kind of moral conscience, I think. They're called the B team of business leaders. And they are heads of very major companies, but they've made commitments of the right sort, and I'm satisfied they really mean it. They talk about climate the way I do, how serious it is, the climate and nature. They also see the nature regeneration as part of it. And they have estimated that we spend 1.8 trillion funding what is harming us, mainly subsidies for fossil fuel. 1.8 trillion a year on what's harming us. So it's a paradox. We're on the cusp of a clean energy, safe climate world. We're nearly there. All we have to do is get out of fossil fuel as quickly as possible. But as I mentioned earlier, there's $4 billion a year, making sure that that's not clear and it's messed around and it's made different, and there's all kinds of clever ways in which you can mess up the science and mess up everything in order to prolong the profits. That's all it is. It's prolonging the profits. So women leaders need to step up at COP28 in a very big way, much more than we've ever done, in order that we treat the crisis, the climate and nature crisis, as a crisis, not as something we have to deal with. That's different. Something we have to deal with is just an incremental thing. And that's the way the politicians, especially in the West, are dealing with it, because they don't get the pressure from the ground. They don't feel they lose their jobs as politicians if they don't treat it as a crisis. On the contrary, they feel if they take a hard decision, they lose their job. And that's the problem. So we have to create a huge momentum for a crisis-driven approach that gets us over this hump into a climate-safe world, which will be much better for everybody, and in particular for women and girls who suffer the most from the climate crisis. That's the short version, but I could go on forever.
Thank you. I think I know we have three individuals who have questions left. That may be all we have time for. So I will
There's
ask.
someone at the back also.
Yes. Oh, we'll try to get in as many as we can. So I would just ask questions and answers, be as brief as possible.
Hi, Maliha. I'm Zoya Anwar from Pakistan.
Big Pakistani contingent, welcome.
Okay.
I did not plant them right at the front, I promise.
So, you must know that in 2018, Pakistan passed a landmark law for trans bodies. But last month, they kind of like rolled it back. So, given that, there will be a lot of dialogue about trans bodies, their rights. Can you like comment about how can activists in Pakistan kind of like, face the, like, how can they address the pushback? Because it's kind of like immense right now. And even though it's like, like you mentioned, you take like 3 steps forward and then it's like you are back again. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much. My name is Daniel Sabiti. I'm a journalist from Kigali today, local press. I'm very sure somebody who will welcome you to Kigali, you have already been welcomed. And I can still say welcome to Kigali. Visit a gorilla, take a gorilla pledge. It would be very sad if this conference ended without a local media voice. And one thing I've not heard is about Rwanda. When I entered this room this afternoon, I didn't have where to sit. And the gentleman over there got me a seat. And then 30 minutes later, a lady came in from the New Times. It's a local leading newspaper, English newspaper. So I saw her and I stood up. I gave her my seat. And I've been standing all through. What am I trying to say? Rwanda is a country that does not only respect women, but gives them the spaces. So maybe you can give us some comments about what inspirations are you going to pick from Rwanda? What lessons are you learning from Rwanda? Because you cannot make the home run without talking about Rwanda in this conference. Okay, so give us what are some of the inspirations? What are some of the messages that you have? Because look, we have 64%. The target was supposed to be 30% in Parliament, but now we have got 64 and it keeps rising every time. And we have a saying in Rwanda that abagore barabishoboye, women can. What message are you giving African women, especially women in Rwanda? Thank you very much.
Thank you, firstly, for hosting us and welcoming us so warmly. In Africa, Rwanda is definitely one of the countries that has helped to lift us up in terms of the participation and representation of women. It is an important contribution, not just for Rwanda, but for the world, because when positive change happens in one part of the world, it lifts all of us. You set the bar high and you put pressure on all the countries that are still lagging behind. But also, I am quite impressed with the way Rwanda has pushed on technology and the way in which women are playing a critical role in that process. We are all anticipating with anxiety what the new technologies are going to do to humanity and the danger of women being left behind. I think there's a lot we can all learn from Rwanda that we can take into consideration in our countries in order to make sure that our countries are not left behind and definitely our women are also not left behind. So thank you so much for being the voice, even at the AU, on this issue.
Thank you. I did promise this gentleman long ago that I would let him ask a question. We'll let him go.
It's a
and then
short question, right?
question.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. I was afraid women were avoiding my question. Never mind, I'm a he for she. I'm from Cameroon. I'm from the northwest and the southwest where the conflict is raging, like my brother just said. And there is a group of women, I'm representing them here because they cannot come in for a press conference, the Northwest Southwest Peace Movement, and they've been fighting to push back the conflict, and I'm wondering what the Women Deliver has as support for them, because they're actually working against the background of the repression and the killing, and women's bodies have been turned into the new terrain for conflict in the Northwest. And right now, as we speak, more than 100 children have been born out of war and the conflict. Women are actually raped even in front of their husband, even breastfeeding women. I'm wondering what women can do. And of course, the Norwegian Refugee Council says that the conflict is the most underreported, and I'm seeing over 200 media houses here. I'm just promising them now I'm available. I'm a content creator. I can give them as much information as possible about the conflict in the Northwest and Southwest, especially in relation to how it is affecting women negatively. So I'm available. So I want the conflict reported as much as possible, the same way as I've been reported about Tigray. And I'm hearing the former South African Vice President talking about her intervention. I don't know how she has been intervening in the conflict in the Northwest and the Southwest of Cameroon.
Exactly what you just did is what we hope that we're able to do for all of those people, girls and women who live in the margins, who do not often get a voice, whether it's indirectly through a champion like you, or directly, to have the global attention turned to them, to be able to make connections across borders and to be heard, because they're often kept in the margins. One of my favorite saying by Arundhati Roy is that there is no one who is silenced. There are those that are unheard. So I hope that they have voice, and I hope that everyone here, but also the 6,300 delegates and the ones online, also hear the voice of all of those who are talking about women and girls who live in conflict, those that are marginalized, those voices and concerns and issues are not heard. And this is exactly the thing I was saying to all of you. Your special particular role, beyond just being one of the 6,300 delegates, is to actually project that voice way beyond the halls of where we're walking right now. And so I hope that you take that responsibility very seriously and help this gentleman and help the hundreds of thousands and millions of other voiceless people, unheard people out there in the world. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm so sorry we only have time. We're already running over, and these incredibly busy and important women have scheduled appointments they've already run late for. We will end with just please one sentence about hope.
I am hoping that you will take the messages that not just us, but all the women in the conference are trying to communicate and magnify them and take action on them, because the media can put a lot of pressure and force change to happen. So I'm hoping that you will approach this conference with that resolve. But also that a conference like this is a moment of inspiration. We have a lot of young people at this conference. Many of them are attending a conference of this nature for the first time ever in their lives. We are hoping that by being here, they will acquire the necessary skills, determination to continue with the fight. And life will just never be the same for them as they go back, because it has happened to many of us. One of my aha moments was attending a women's conference, International Women's Conference, for the first time. That was a breakthrough moment, and I've never been the same since then. We are hoping that today, as we go back, there'll be a lot of newborns who have come here, were born again, and they will be going back home to kick butt.
Well, I mean, to be honest, Pumzila, you stole mine. I was going to say, I still remember many, many years ago, my first international conference when I had never, ever worked out of my own country, and my eyes were opened, my jaw was on the ground. I could not believe there were so many other fellow feminists and women and men who believed in the things I did. I was not alone. There was a network out there. My aspirations never went back to that. I aspired to lead and to step onto bigger stages and to be a powerful voice for those who could not be a voice for themselves. But I will, given that she already said it, I'm still, what I will say is my hope is in this generation of adolescent girls. If we as a community can make our commitments to them, if we do not fail them, and we allow them to achieve their full potential and to thrive in the ways that they have every right to do as a human being, then we will be able to achieve a quantum leap in the feminist movement and in gender equality that we could never achieve otherwise. And so I hope that all of us at Women Deliver make that commitment and we're able to realize it over the next decade. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all the questions, but please come to any of us at the Women Deliver Media team if you're interested in.